So we're looking from a very low percentage of potential students. And so that's been our struggle, and I'll share some ideas as we go down, but that's enough for me for right now.
My name's Patricia. I'm from Reach Church, and we're located here in Kirkland. We are launching this fall, so it's our first time, and yeah, we're excited to get it started. I graduated from Northwest, so yeah, it's really surreal being back here for this. This is strange.
I'm Darren. I'm from Zilla, which is a very rural city.
Where's Zilla?
It's between Yakima and the Tri-Cities.
Oh.
So we have about 3,000 to 3,500 people. Just got our first stoplight. And so it's kind of an interesting location, but there's not much as far as options out there, which was part of the reason why we started this. I'm the principal of a private school at our church as well. It's a very, very small private school. And so we want to look at options for our students who are graduating but can't necessarily relocate. I also graduated from Northwest. So yeah, very strange being back.
My name is Larry. We're there in Tacoma, Washington. This also is our first year. We have 5 students. We have a lot that said they're going to come, but prayerfully that will happen. I also am a Northwest alumni. I'm not going to tell you when I graduated, but we're getting our feet wet and it's learning. It's exciting.
Awesome.
I'm Dennis, the same school that Larry's from. I'm an adjunct from Northwest. I've been since 2000. So this is a new experience working with the CPP. So I'm one of the professors there.
Cool.
I'm Stan Burley, and I'm from Malala, Oregon, a town of 8,000. What brings me here is I accompanied my daughter Letitia Burley, that is on staff at the People's Church in Salem, so she didn't have to make the 4-hour drive one way herself, so here I am. But I am also here kind of as auditing the class, you might say, but thinking I'm pre-CPP. That's why I came with the 5 or less. And I was getting some really good insight on how the comprehensive view of this program is to work. Of course, I know it's unique for each place, but my wife and I have a heart. We're very much involved in our church. We raise our daughter in that church where we attend at Malala. And so, if this would work, if there's interest, be happy to refer them to Letitia, the People's Church, or start it myself, but whoever might have time. But thanks for your time.
My name is Kyla. I am from Westgate Chapel, which is in Edmonds, Washington. This past year we had 3 students, and I think for next year we have like 7 to 10 that are interested, but you never know if those are actual interests or not, so hopefully that'll be cool.
Awesome. Cool. Well, why don't we just open it up for questions, things you guys want to dialogue about, things you want to learn about, or we can just kind of talk about it as a table.
Well, let me just throw something out maybe to start the conversation going, perhaps. Our biggest challenge, now we come from Idaho, as I said, and that is a very relational state. You'll relate in Zilla. I know where Zilla is, and I drive right by it every time I go between here and Boise. And rural areas, the people, they just respond differently. If you're in the I-5 corridor, they're going to respond pretty much in a certain way. You get to where, it's farming community and rural community, and they're going to respond totally different. And don't try to move the same program. It's, as I said in the vernacular, it ain't going to work. And you gentlemen that are working with a different kind of race, I've been blessed to be in some of your churches. I'm sorry, we don't worship quite that way. You know what I mean? And so we're looking again at a different culture. And I think when we talk about our different CPPs, we must take into consideration the culture that we're drawing from and adapt the program to fit that culture. Now, having said that, and having said that I live in a relational place, and I'll say this, I was raised as a missionary kid in Latin America, And I was a missionary myself for 40 years down there, so I'm very much up on what relational life is like. You don't live in Latin America all your life and don't understand relationships. So living in Idaho is just like, you know, like I tell many people, I'm still on a mission field. The language just changed. I can't speak Spanish that much anymore. But the relational part is key, and we found this out this last year. We started off with 29 students, we ended up with 19. We lost 10 students. They all withdrew. Many of them were doing flunking work when they withdrew. And as I've been talking to these students, the number one thing that comes out time after time after time after time, we just felt by ourselves. We felt alone. We didn't feel support. And so we're going to do some, with that as a background, we're going to do some changes this next time. And we're going to draw, there are many churches with CPPs with 1 or 2 students. And if they're within 25 miles of each other, we're going to draw them into a central place to create more students. And then we have churches that don't have any CPP. The pastor could care less about a CPP, but there are kids or young people within that church that want to learn how to be a better minister or how to be a minister. So I'm lucky. The superintendent and I are on first name basis. We're buddies. We go out to lunch all the time. And so having the ear of the leadership in Southern Idaho, we're being able to create some scenarios. And the scenario that we're creating is, if a student comes from a church with no CPP, if a student comes from a church that just has 1 or maybe 2 students, and if they're 25 miles from the district office, that's where their CPP hub is going to be. We're going to bring all the students into there. If the pastor doesn't cooperate, we don't care. We're going to bring them in there. Then I will go and talk to the pastor, and that's where my longevity comes in. I will go and talk to the pastor, twist his arm, do whatever's necessary so that we can create an intern program, or at least an intern presence within the church that student comes from. And he'll have to do that part, but you know, at least I can make it work. If the pastor just says, I don't want it, we'll let the student keep on going there, and I will create an internship type program that will still work, that will meet the requirements. So this is one way I think, you know, I haven't tried it yet, but this is one way I think it's going to work, because we're going to be pulling in. I expect the first night of class, we're probably going to end. I say night of class. This is not the NU class. This is a class that I will create as the intern director. So they will be coming 2 hours a week to the district office as part of their practicum. They're supposed to have that weekly meeting. That's going to be their weekly meeting at the district office, and that's where we're going to do their relational stuff. And if they're having trouble with a class, we'll talk about it there. I'll call their professor. Some students are scared to death of their professors. They don't want to call them. I'll call their professor. The professor doesn't scare me. I'm one too. So I'll call them. We'll talk to them. We'll get a lot of stuff taken care of, I think. That's my goal. The superintendent's 100% behind me. And what we have seen, before with ELITE, we had practicums, yes. We did not. We had the cohorts. Those cohorts are, I mean, they're no longer in school, but they're still together. We had one of those cohorts, we finally worked through, and he came and walked the line Saturday with his BA. And when he came down, and we met right afterwards and went out for lunch, he was already getting texts from his buddies from his cohort saying, hey Clay, way to go. Man, you did it. I'm so glad, you know. And one of them responded, 2 of them responded and says, man, you did it. You're really putting the pressure on. I'm going to have to finish up mine now. This is what the cohort system does. And this is what we feel like we have to create. And we feel we can do it through these weekly practicum meetings. So that's one possibility.
Yeah, I think I'm Dennis, but I taught in the ELITE program for years. And one thing I noticed is a difference in relationships. Because of the on-site, each week, each class, each group, they went through that entire program together. Here we're having to build distance relationships, people online or not having enough to have an in-person group, which is what we're faced with now. We're running I-Core, but that's the only course we're doing in person. The rest of it's online. So we don't have that relationship building component, and somehow we're going to build that. So we have a similar arrangement where we have a denominational group, and we're pulling people from different churches to make up our group. And that's a difficult pull because of the competition. In Tacoma, we've got a lot of schools, and people are going to those schools. And so here we are offering another avenue, but we can't get the numbers that you would in a traditional college setting. So same challenges, but the idea is good, pulling groups together, smaller numbers together to meet some of the requirements of CPP.
Yeah, and that's what Carrie was talking about in the last break that I went to, is kind of the difference. There's two different, you can do an informal hub or a formal hub, which is that idea of bringing together students. And, you know, even for our site, we've kind of explored that idea that not so much even just building relationships with students outside of our site, but even bringing our students together.
Right.
Because we don't quite have that 10 plus number for a live class, but you know, we could bring them together and we'll do class via Zoom or video, however we do it, with another site somewhere else. And there we go, we get live class, but it fosters that relationship, which I think is kind of the key for, especially for small sites. I think relationship just has to be there, or you're gonna end up with kids who they drop out because there's no one keeping them there.
Seems like the difficulty there is getting 10 individuals that are at the same place, you know, in their education, so that you can have a live session.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's almost like you're relegated to having it online, you know.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we probably got 2 students who started last semester, but they're the only 2 that are together, truly together with the same class schedule.
yeah.
So it
That's
does
the other
increase.
issue, the class schedule.
Yeah.
They're not all on the same class schedule.
That's it.
So that's why I kind of run around the side door and I'm using the practicum as the draw card to bring people together, rather than their classes,
Yep.
using the practicum.
That's really good. And that's the freedom every CPP has, is you get to develop that practicum, however it works best for you in your context, because what works for me may not work for you, but you can design that however you need. And and truly, I think that is the greatest strength of the program. The academics is great and it's important, but with the online nature, the academics isn't going to be the same as if you came here to go to class and we're sitting in every class live. And the strength of the CPP is the internship. Is you get to design this program to however you want, however you can train people for your specific type of ministry. So. Well, obviously we kind of fit within many different circles of context. John is in rural areas. We're kind of in suburban areas, and one of our campuses is in West Seattle, which is a little more urban. So, and I'm sure between the different places you're at, there's different targets. What are some of the issues you guys have faced in a smaller CPP that we might be able to talk about?
I think it's just getting above that number 5.
Yeah.
You know, like Dennis was saying, with all the other institutions that are offering the same,
Yeah.
you know, we battle with that, with something new. Sometimes people are a little leery, when something new. I mean, to get over that paradigm shift, they're not quite there. So, we have that we have to struggle with as well, getting students in.
The other classes I sat in on had to do with how does a very well-run program look like, whatnot, and what works for the coordinators. And it sounds pretty good, but now listening to us that are more rural and maybe beginning or small numbers, my question is, now that I did all the preface, I keep forgetting what I'm going to say. I'm sorry. I'm rounding it up, and I know what I want to say, I'm sorry. But, how's it working? Because part of the advantage of CPP is it is more affordable in that you get practical training, gets credit for that. So is that working is there a problem, or does it work, does your pastor leadership in that small rural area work to give the practical credits? You know what I'm talking about? Is there a problem with that, or is these other seemingly larger churches have such structure, they can just put them in with the music minister for 4 hours a week, you know, type of thing, with their little format. But in the smaller churches, is that an issue? Or is it working out just fine to get the colleagues credits with a practical application?
It is
That's my
an
question.
issue, and I find I have to do most of that work.
So you have to have someone like spearheading it and
I find
pushing it.
that as the regional coordinator for Southern Idaho, I end up talking to the pastors and saying, whatever her or his name is, they want to be an intern.
Yeah.
And this is how I think we can work together and lay most of the work on me.
Yeah.
As far as the preparation and all that is concerned. But then I tell them, but you will have to, there is going to be some work that you will have to do. Are you willing to do that? And be real honest, you're going to have to meet with this intern. You, as a senior pastor, are going to have to meet with this intern at least once a week. 30 minutes, fine. But you're going to have to meet with her or him. You're going to have to talk to him. And because there are some things within the practicum program that, they're there and you have to do it. And if the pastor responds positively and you explain to him at the end of these 7 weeks, you're going to give me a grade on what this intern did. A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, or F. And then I will take from that grade then my experience with the intern. I will go ahead and send it into here. So the pastor knows, and the pastor might say, I'm going to let this student go with the youth, or I'm going to let this student go with the worship. That's fine. That's up to them. But what I've noticed is, if there's one student in a church and the pastor doesn't have a great vision for interns, and most of them don't, sorry about that, but they don't, then the best thing to do is I create the program. I present it to the pastor as a full creation. All he has to do basically is fill in the white lines. The pastor that will do that, and I haven't had anybody turn me down yet. They've come close a couple times, but I've managed to trick them into accepting. Those that accept, I've got one student right now. She's been in this church, I think we're into the 3rd year. She wants credentials, and we're going down. Anyway, she's in school, just studying 1 class a semester. And she told me right from the very beginning, I want to become involved in counseling. And then she said, I want to become involved as a counselor, as a, what's the word? It'll come to me in a minute, but working within the hospitals. Praying for people. Chaplain, thank you. As a chaplain in a hospital setting. So I want to talk to her pastor. Her pastor says, well, yeah, that's what my wife runs. So I talked to his wife, and pretty soon we had her set up with his wife in a hospital setting. In the beginning, she did not have the credentials to be a counselor, but she was able to go and visit these people. So semester by semester, I just ratcheted up what she was supposed to be doing. And now she has taken enough classes that she is a bona fide registered counselor within that hospital system. She has attained her goal and hasn't got her degree yet. But part of it is that she will get her degree. So these are ways we can work. This was a win-win for everybody. Others haven't worked out quite that great. But the key is, when you only have one person, the pastor's not interested, just go and present him a complete package. Here it is, sir. Are you going to help this young person or not? Really lay the guilt trip on him. That's what you have to do. And again, I'm old enough to do it. And I use my age. You guys know what I'm talking about. I use my age occasionally. When it's appropriate. I'm not a bully, but I do use it if I feel I need to. So that's the way I do it. Now, again, personalities, that's me. My wife could not do that. There's no way. She'd make the person madder than mad within the first 5 minutes. She'd say, here it is, take it or leave it. That's not the way you do it, but that's the way she would do it. Nothing wrong. We've been married over 50 years and we're still happy. But that's, so personalities enter into it, the way you prepare your presentation, the way you present it, that all has to be you too. So, but that is one way I believe that we're going to see substantial growth this year as we go into this a little more proactive way of doing the practicums.
So I have a rather large question actually, because we're jumping into this and in over our heads, and by we I mean me. So I'm trying to wrap my head around this internship. Like I get the purpose of the internship, but I just don't get the nuts and bolts of it. So the internship, the practicum credits, is that broken up by semester in 7 weeks, or is it like a whole year thing? How does that work?
2 semesters.
2 semesters.
Yeah, the credit is broken up in terms of how it functions. Like our internship is still going. Like we go through June, so semester's technically over at this point, but we just keep going with our internship because we want the overall experience to last. We still have ministry going on. We still have a use for interns, so we keep it going. As far as kind of, do you have questions about like the weekly nuts and bolts, like what it looks like, or just more in terms of credit?
Well, the first one was the credit. So,
Yeah.
But then I'm seeing lots of like weird hour, like some say 4 to 6, some say.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really matter. It's like what works for you, kind of a thing.
Kind of. I think what Ben, the assistant provost, said was probably at least 4, like a minimum of 4 to 6. I think for us, we do about 15 hours a week. So we kind of try to break it up though, so most of those people can work almost full-time jobs if they need to. But it's kind of like a Monday, we do an intern chapel from 2 to 3. From 3 to 5, we break out and do intern specific to their ministry training meetings. So we do leadership development, we do planning events, stuff that we're going to do for the ministry. And then Wednesday, they serve. Most of them serve in youth ministry, some in worship and arts, but Wednesday night is kind of like our big. So from 4 to 9 o'clock on Wednesdays, and then Sunday mornings they're serving from 8 to 12:30. So I mean, between just serving on Wednesdays and Sundays, that's already going to be about 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours. So then you add in that ministry training, and that's the important part because Northwest doesn't give credit for, you serve in ministry, it's for learning. And so that's where you have to develop that internship practicum syllabus that basically outlines what are they going to learn as an intern. And even developing a first-year plan, second-year plan, and beyond, what are those interns learning so it's not just repeat every year. So, okay.
What they do at the end of the 7-week, well, it's actually a 15-week semester. What they do at the end of the 15-week semester has to be more than what they were doing at the beginning.
Okay.
There has to be some learning carried on in there. And they have to be able to prove the learning. Well, the coordinator really is the one that has to be able to substantiate the outcomes that are present there. So this is where the coordinator, director, pastor, whomever is working with the program, this is where they have to get very creative, because this is the part that is for their church. We've got these boundaries, but within those boundaries, those academic boundaries, we're free to do anything we want to, as long as there's outcomes, as long as there's instruction that takes place, and as long as the student has a chance to write down what they have learned, what they feel they have learned, which is their final paper. As long as those 3 things exist, then we're good. But how do we get to those outcomes? That's where things get interesting. Because, one of the things I was facing with one of our interns in the church that I actually attend, and that is she wanted to be part of the worship team. Well, I talked to the pastor and we're good friends. He said, sure, she can be part of the worship team. Okay, so how are we going to work that into some measurable outcomes? It's one thing to get in front of a congregation and sing. It's one thing to come practice with them, but what is she learning? She could already sing. She came as an accomplished singer. So what are we going to do? That's where things get interesting. Is when the coordinator starts putting those nuts and bolts to the overall program.
And even another point to that, some of the conversations we're having as a church is, and as a denomination, at least for us, is how do we develop the next generation of youth pastors, children's pastors, campus pastors, lead pastors? Because attending a university is great, but I don't know if for some of you guys, I became a youth pastor, and suddenly there's things I'm learning I didn't learn at university. And so I think that's where the strength of our programs comes in. We can take people along and prepare them even better for ministry beyond just, what are the concepts? How does it flesh out in a real ministry context? What are the lessons you're learning? And so if you can even think that way, how can I bring this intern along to, if they want to be a pastor someday or a youth pastor or even work in urban ministry or how it fits within your context, how do I get them there?
Another area that I have concerns about, we have an adult group, returning adults. Some college, some have degrees, but they want to get more specific training and academic education and ministry. The financial aid piece of this thing is what we're running up against. Our younger students don't have the funding. Older adults have funding, but reprioritizing and trying to go back to school, so they need some financial support. Getting into the university, that part's pretty easy, but we're running into people not being able to get all the transcripts because they've been in 2 or 3 colleges over time and all of that. So it's delaying us. And I guess the frustration is you identify the name, but they don't come with qualifications to even get into the university. So how have you dealt with that? I mean, or other than educating and trying to give orientation about what's required for enrollment, but getting them into that point where they can sign their names, yes, they raise their hands, yes, I'm interested. But then we start getting, okay, where are your transcripts? We need to get applications by deadlines. Can you afford to do this, that question? And we end up running up against the wall sometimes.
Yeah.
One of my early questions, I have 3 questions I ask an interested person. What are you going to be? What do you want to be? It doesn't really matter their answer particularly, but at least it gives me an idea. Okay, this person is directed. If they come up with some very vague answer, then I'm aware that they probably need a little help in helping them direct themselves. The second question then that I ask them is, have you attended other colleges? Some say yes, some say no. Those that say no, my third question is actually the same for both. What was your GPA? And most of them are pretty honest because they know that I'm going to be looking at the transcript pretty soon. And if they're out of high school, it's one thing. If they're local, they can go into their high school and usually get their transcript within just a few hours. Go in one day and go back the next day and pick it up. But don't wait for the summer vacation.
Right.
You'll never get it. We ran into this in Burley. We waited for almost 4 months to get a transcript simply because the registrar's office was shut down. But if they're truthful with their GPA, then this kind of corresponds to your question. If they say, oh, my GPA is 2.8, 2.9, great, you're good. There's not going to be any problem. If they're saying, well, and they're kind of hesitant, you say, well, was it a 2.5? Then you got a problem. And the students pretty much know what their GPA is. They're not going to want to admit it if it's too low, but they pretty much know what it is. I had a student come in just 3 weeks ago. And when I hit my third question, he'd been at 2 different colleges, which raised my eyebrows a bit because Southern Idaho doesn't have that many. And so I said, so what's your college GPA? I said, come on, Kyle, I'm going to find out sooner or later. He says, 1.8. I says, you're not going to make it. go back and do some serious study and get that up above 2 points, and then we can accept you under probation and get it to 2.5 and you're good. So I guess this fall he's gonna go back and pick up some more general education classes. He's flunked some and gotten D's on others, and he's been a pretty miserable student. But we didn't even get to the point of applying, because I feel that those are some of the right questions that you have to ask early on to let the student know that, you know what, you're really not going to qualify, so he doesn't get a letter from Ruth saying, I just got a copy of a letter, application denied. That is awful for a student to get that. And you know, the student had a 1.87. No, they're not going to accept them. And I have no problems. Ruth came up to me yesterday, and she says, I hope you know, and I said, Ruth, that's the way it is. But, so those are the three things I do at the very inquiry level. If I see that they're kind of interested enough to ask questions, then I ask them questions. And we go from there.
I think one thing you said on too that was really good was giving them time to get stuff done. When you rush it, and it's like through the summer. Summer's the worst because the schools are they shut down. Getting those transcripts and trying to hustle to get through those steps can sometimes either students starting late, you never want to do that, or you're trying to hustle to get stuff in and you don't get a time to actually process, even pray about, is this the right next step for this person, you know, for them. So take time. I'd say start early. Earlier you start, the better. And that even helps when you do run into those complications.
Right.
Getting
You
through.
can work it out.
Yeah, getting through FAFSA sometimes.
Yeah.
Those students need their parents' tax information, but they've been on their own for 2 years, and that's a real burden sometimes in trying to get through that.
And FAFSA, from a 7% that they were checking more in depth with, I can't remember the exact term, that's gone up to the 30 percentile. So if you send an application into FAFSA, there's one chance out of three chances out of 10 that your application is going to be pulled. They're going to ask you more information, and it's going to take you a month instead of a few days. So you really, you know, in those circumstances, you really need time. I mean, they will work with you down at the office, but they can't put any money into your account until they get that money from the federal government. And so, you know, we had one student that went through almost the entire first semester with this huge debt, and FAFSA finally came through.
Yeah.
And boy, she was one relieved young lady, I'll tell you, because we weren't sure. A couple weeks from the end, we weren't sure, but they're pretty good at the office down here. Trust them down here, please.
Yeah.
They are good. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, more often than not, that financial aid comes through later in the semesters. It's never
Rather than
before.
earlier.
So those kids, they get a call from the office and they're like, I have a balance, like, just hold on, you'll get the money, it'll come through.
And if they will call the office will tell them the same thing. They'll
Yeah.
say, we notice your FAFSA is on file, you've gotten your letter, you know how much you're getting, you're okay, just relax. So,
I know one big topic, especially for smaller sites, is how do we get more students? Like, how are we recruiting? What are some of the things that you guys have done that you think have worked well? And what are things that maybe you'd like more information about?
how many of you guys are new? I know you two down there, most of us are new.
You guys have done a year.
Okay.
Okay. You guys are starting this year?
1 year.
No.
Oh, you've done a year. Okay. Yeah.
And no, we're not getting enough students. That's, I'm interested
Yeah.
in that answer too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm right in the thick of it, like, also trying to learn more, because we're a larger church, but we still have that struggle of, you know, trying to break through to get to that 10 number. Yeah. I know some churches, their primary strategy is not even within their own church, it's, you know, they get out. For us, it's kind of the opposite. We work with our youth ministry and try to use that graduating class as our kind of our first promotional piece.
I have a meeting set up with our superintendent when I get back, and I think we've agreed to this, but, you have to get it in writing, you have to get it in the minutes. But I think what we're gonna be doing is, if a present student recruits and brings another student in, and they apply and are accepted, we're gonna give them a scholarship, maybe $500 or something like that, to encourage them to do that. We've encouraged the students to do that, and they say, oh yeah, we'll do it, and then they walk out the room and forget all about it. Now, occasionally they will, and when they do, word of mouth is the strongest motivation you can get. So if you can get your students to talking positively about the program and getting their friends to come in and talk to you, then you're well down the road of getting them. So we thought, we heard in the last meeting that food means a lot. Well, money means more. So we're gonna try to apply some money to this. Every student you get, we're thinking $500. Let's start it off good. And if we run through some of our NU money, that's the way the bird flies. And we're gonna go ahead and try that, because we do need more students, and we feel that way is gonna help. And we're also, like I was saying this last time, just within a few weeks, we're gonna end up alongside of the Snake River with a big fishing day. And we're gonna invite everybody and their cousin, and they can bring their nephews along too. The pastor there tells me, he says, we're gonna have a couple hundred people out here. So, that'd be awesome if we can just sign up 10% of those, that's 20. And this is gonna be statewide, well, district-wide, the invitation. So we gotta think outside the box. The old ways are not working. We're working with a new, different type of generation. You guys think different. My daughter's 40, so she's older than you are. And as I talk to her, and then I talk to my grandkids who are 14, 15, or my older grandkids who are just starting college, man, there's a world of difference between my daughter and them. I mean, they're sometimes talking a totally different language. And I'm not even saying that there's no way I'm gonna talk your language. The cultural differences are too big. I can understand enough to communicate, and that's about it. And I understand that part. So what do? We just have to get groups together so that we get people that are under the same culture that begin talking and communicating with themselves, and then we're gonna move ahead.
Yeah, I mean, some practical strategies, even how you promote is big. Like, do you have a social media presence? Do you have a functioning website? Are you interacting with other people? Or is it just within your circle? Expanding your circle and your influence is a huge way of just getting awareness about what you do. So I think that's kind of a practical one. I think some of the people who do it well, I know last year Kim Wheeler did a breakout on social media. It was very good. So they're in Tacoma at Life Center. I think BCA is doing a great job as well. So those are some other churches I'm sure would be, if you have questions about how they run social media. My church, we're trying to get into it. We're getting there. So our big platform we use is Instagram. Even Facebook is kind of gone its course with the newer generation, which it's sad how fast things can change. But so Instagram's a big one.
What is your favorite media?
Instagram.
Instagram.
And it's good because it creates awareness, but it's also a great tool for you to communicate with your students. We use it. We encourage all our students to follow it, and that's where we'll post, our next events, all that. But it's also, so it kind of is two purposes. It's great for internal communication, but it's also great for creating that awareness and the buzz that you want.
But don't forget, encourage your students to check their Northwest emails, because Northwest still communicates through the email. That's where you're gonna get the official communications is gonna come from them. So just make sure that they stay on that email page.
Well, looks like we got way 2 minutes. Do we have any other questions, things we want to talk about?
Has this been of help? If nothing else, just to jar our minds loose from whatever rut they were in. And maybe get us up on top of the rut. I just remember something I read several years ago, and I'm sure you guys have all heard it, that the difference between a rut and a place where you get buried, it just the stop on either end. So let's not get caught in a rut, which will take us to the grave. So let's get on top and keep moving forward.
Gotta go from Facebook to Instagram.
What's that? You know, I never did do Facebook. My wife does it.
Yeah.
But I think I'm gonna have to jump over Facebook and get into Instagram. And
Who knows what they'll come up with in 5 years?
exactly. Okay, thank you for your attention. Thank you for helping us, or else we would have just been sitting here looking at each other.
Thank you both.
All right, so God bless. We're at lunch next. Something like that, I think, yeah.
Yes, so you from Oregon?
It is lunch.
Quick property, Salem area?
Well, Kelvin,
People
get to know you a little better.
Letitia's from there, and I accompanied her, but I didn't know while I was like 15 minutes from Salem. And I'm really involved in my church,
Yes.
but we were thinking about CPP.
Oh, sure.
And it's like, I don't know if I can carry the ball and make it work. It is available. If someone's interested, it certainly can happen.
Right.
But to generate interest and screen the interest,
Right.
if there's just not a flood of people, but
Yes.
I'm going to be seeing more of a need for a structure like through the university. We're in the country. I think our pastor has the mindset, he's been there for 26 years. It's like, I hear their jokes about the college educated, they're supposed to be so great. You know what I'm saying? You don't mean to be that way, but it's like downing education. And in this day and age, I know spirit-led is incredibly important, but pursuing God through structure, like through the unit, that's a discipline. I think it's very
I think
effective.
it's needed.
It is. I think
The
it is.
difficulty we have is we really don't have a local church that can sponsor this CPP. What we've done, our denomination bought into it, so
Kind of like
our
he had
jurisdiction,
done.
very much so.
Oh, I see.